I have spent years on both sides of table negotiating multi-million dollar software deals with biggest names in the game. Yes, TCS, Infosys, and HCL included. Trust me, the difference between a great contract and a distressed one is knowing just a few key phrases. Today, I am pulling back the curtain and giving you by step guide to reviewing their contracts. We are focusing on intellectual property and limitation of liability clauses that make or break a deal. You ready to negotiate like a pro? Let's go. Every software contract is negotiable. With a right due diligence, you will safeguard your business, build trust, and create win-win relationship and partnership. Signing a big software contract can make or break your business relationships as well, right? We need to look into detailed analysis and the 50 pages of MSA Master Service Agreement and just thought where to even begin. Software contracts from major vendors are designed to protect them, not you. But don't worry, I'm breaking down the entire process. I will show you exactly where to look for hidden risks relating to scope, payments, or termination. And make a checklist and hit the like button. So it's giving you a step-by-step blueprint and legal terms to use, review, and negotiate these complex agreements where we are cutting through the jargons. So what is software contract? A contract legally agreed between both service provider and the customer. It defines what services to be delivered and how much it will be paid and what are the timelines and quality standards and data protection and responsibilities of the both parties. So it becomes a foundation for billing, delivery, and even the legal disputes if things go wrong. So majorly the IT software contracts start with MSA. This is the main frame agreement where one agreement between the supplier and the customer, and it governs hundreds of SOWs under this one MSA. Under one MSA, the main key phrases and clauses of the contract will be included, and under SOW, statement of work, there will be each specific SOW for each project. So the SOW mainly defines the scope, deliverables, and timelines. But remaining all common clauses will be included under MSA. That you have to refer for each SOW, the MSA for the common clauses. The pricing annexure details cost, billing terms, and payment schedule. It will be included. And most importantly, service level agreement SLAs, the deliverable requirement deadlines will be included here, and the performance metrics, uptime, and penalties in case if we aren't meeting the service level agreements, like within 24 hours you have to deliver the work. If you are not delivering, these kind of penalties, 1%, 2% penalties will be levied on the services. Change request mechanism, the process for scope changes and financial impact. So any change request will be informed in advance. So the change request comes which is not agreed in the SOW and which is outside the scope of the work, which will require the change request and will be executed on top of SOW. Steps to review the software contract, understand the scope of work. This is very critical. All delivery teams has to define the clear scope of work, the technologies they use, and the timelines and number of resources. This is basically the work of delivery and milestones. The delivery team after that give the start date and delivery phrases and deadlines and milestone to be achieved, because the payments are linked to milestone delivery to the customer, whether it is a fixed or a time and material based. Once the deliverables are achieved, and commercial and pricing model should be defined in the contract, whether it is a fixed price or time and material or outcome based pricing. Travel, hardware, or cloud usage, all the extra costs should be included in the commercial section. And legal and risk clauses. All liabilities, indemnity, data privacy, and termination rights, it should be included in the legal contract in order to protect the interest of both the parties at agreed levels, and it should be reviewed and given sign off by the legal department. And the finance has to review an entire contract should be reviewed by the finance team, the legal team, the delivery team. Once they review and give the sign off, then the contract will go for signature for the both the parties. In some cases, there's a legal team they governing the laws and jurisdiction, considering the global framework of the different regions, and important cross-border contracts also they sign, and they include the arbitration clauses where they can go for arbitration in future if they need any clarification or closing the contract terms. So choose the favorable legal environments. So the key clauses here is, and scope of work is the very important thing, and it should be defined by the delivery team. This is the responsibility of the delivery, how they are using the resources or a skill set of the resources, and what are the milestones they can uh, deliver based on the requirement of the scope given by the customer. These kind of critical elements will be defined, reviewed, and approved by the delivery team. Same will be included in the contract. And pricing and payment terms. So the payment terms should be within the 30 days or 40 days or 45 days should be defined clearly, and it should be agreed by the both the parties. And termination clause, this is very critical for any contract. The exit condition, notice period, and refund obligations, termination for convenience versus breach. So these clauses will come with the different kind of requirements from the customer in order to protect the interest of the both the parties. We will go in detail about these clauses in the coming slides. Intellectual property rights and ownership of the code, customization and licenses, and restrictions on the reuse and resale. This is very important because unless we protect the interest in the contract, there will be possibility for misusing the IP rights and indemnity and liability. This is very critical and part of the contract, because unless we keep certain kind of clauses, there will be chances to go bankruptcy if not meeting the required damages. Confidentiality and data protection. GDPR, data residency, and encryption standards, NDA clauses, and breach consequences must be included in order to protect the interest of the parties. The important clauses here is scope of the work. Any SOW start with the scope of the work and futures, modules, and exclusions. The tips for the negotiation here is add the change request process for extra cost which is out of the scope activities. Sometimes what will happen, the customer come back to you and ask for to deliver the services which is not defined in the scope, that is extra charge to the supplier. In those cases, unless we clearly define the scope, we need to face the problem. That is the reason we need to always look for defined scope in the contract, and what are excluded from the scope of work. If anything required on top of the defined scope, then they can raise for CR, change request, and they can allocate the extra resources and extra billing for that specific work. That we call as a change request. And payment terms. So payment terms are very critical after delivering the services. Once we invoice, supplier issues the invoice to the customer, that payment, within how much time the client can pay to the supplier. So sometimes within 30 days, client has to pay based on the agreed terms in the contract. From the date of issue of invoice, 30 days, the client has to make the payment. For example, October month, 1st October to 30th October, you will issue the invoice on 31st October and it will be delivered to the customer. And customer has to make the payment from the date of receipt, that is within 31st, from the date of 31st October, 30 days. That means before November 30th, he has to make the payment to the customer. So sometimes that 30 days people will go and accept for 60 days. Sometimes it go to 90 days. Sometimes it go to 120 days also. 120 days is very huge. Nobody will accept. And max it will go to 60 days and 90 days. And it goes with certain levels of exceptions as well. But beyond 120 days or 180 days, it goes very exceptionally with approvals of the management. And advance billing, sometimes it go in order to bill to the customer in advance before starting the work in order to get the payment for certain kind of critical works. It should be agreed by the both the parties in the contract. And the negotiation goes up to 30% to 40% upfront to manage the cash flows. Every company is more focused about the cash and cash reserves. So if there is any kind of a delay in terms of payment, they levy the penalty as well. So if they delay 30 days beyond the payment, and for each day or for overall invoice amount, there will be 1% of extra charges, penalties should be paid by the customer to the supplier. This is the way kind of a structure legal language they have to include in the contract. And it should be include mutual penalty. Include if client delays too. So if a supplier delays any kind of payment to the client or client delays any kind of payment to the supplier, each person has to right to levy 1% extra penalty, right, in order to protect the interest of the parties. And change request and scope creep. So how extra work fee are paid. So whenever there is out of scope work is there, we have the right to charge and bill with the customer confirmation, and for that billing it will be paid and should be chargeable extra. IP rights and ownership. Who owns the code and design and database? Certain times supplier will give the complete need of the IP rights for utilization of the project and to deliver the required project. That time, any IP rights used by the supplier is the owner and he has the complete rights on that IP, and he is using that IP right only for delivering the services here. That time, we need to clearly define the usage and the rights and obligations of IPs, intellectual property rights they are using in the project for delivering the outcomes. Confidentiality and data security. Certain times the client will be at very critical location, critical condition. The data is very confidential. For example, in banking project, if any company, for example, TCS, Infosys has some critical banking projects, RBL or American Bank, British banks, if they are working for those kind of projects, there is a lot of critical data inside the client. So when you have access for that data, and they should not be shared with any kind of third party because it damages the reputation of the banks or any kind of manufacturing companies or any kind of a big billion companies confidentiality. In those cases, the customer definitely ask the supplier sign the NDA, data security, so that any employees working for that project should not share any kind of information to third party, so that the supplier taking a huge risk to sign these kind of confidentiality data security. So this will comply with the GDPR and IT security policies, because they have to do the job across the globe. And next, moving on, limitation of liability, which is a very, very critical and important, because if there is something goes wrong from the supplier side, at the same time from the customer side, each party has to agree for the limitation of liability, because any kind of liability will be fixed maximum to 12 months fee payable, right? Right? So if we don't fix 12 months fee payable or 18 months fee payable or 20 months fee payable with the entire liability, if you agree for unlimited liability, then the supplier may go for bankruptcy as well, right? So this should be fixed, and this has to be negotiated always with the customer, because customer always looks for any kind of things not delivered as promised in the contract. They have a right to charge 100 times or 200 times of a contract price. We should not always look for that. We always cap our liability maximum to 12 months fee payable. So this will protect the risk in the contract. At the same time, indemnity clauses: who pays if third party shows for the kind of work delivered, and both the parties indemnify for the works what they are promised here, for the terms what they promised in the contract. So these indemnity clauses, when supplier indemnifies, yes, I am delivering this work and I am ready to give the indemnify whatever work I delivered for certain period, right? At the same time, the customer also has to agree, okay, you are indemnified for all the deliverables what you have done. At the same time, I will indemnify my work and my promises and how I use the software or development applications what you delivered, you for the same level. For example, I am indemnifying you for my risk and rewards what I delivered to the max class of some 12 months fee payable. At the same time, I also indemnify is equally similarly for 12 months fee payable. So this kind of indemnity for the work delivered by the each party to be limited to the extent of liability. And termination clause. If any kind of contract, which is the most important on top, is the clause for the termination, because there should be always notice period for the termination. Either party can terminate the contract by giving the mutual notice for 60 days, 90 days, or 45 days, or whatever the period, and client has to give the complete payment to the supplier till the date of delivery of the work. So these kind of clauses we have to include either the termination for the cause or termination for the convenience. Certain times what will happen, the supplier wants to terminate the contract. The supplier has the right to get the payment till the date they deliver the services as per the contract. At the same time, the customer wants to terminate the contract for the convenience. At the same time, he has the liability to deliver all the payments till the date they delivered as per the requirement of the contract termination. So, contract negotiation tips: never say yes to everything and evaluate the cost, risk, and delivery capabilities, because we need to see the inherent risk involved in the each clause, either it is a termination clause, liability clause, indemnity clause, warranty clause, or payment clause. You give your version of the terms and conditions, and customer gives from his side what is the terms and conditions. So each party has to agree mutually, then only the clause terms and conditions will be fixed. In the may not be in the first interaction we can negotiate and fix it everything. And if we don't agree for their clauses, if they don't agree for our clauses, our terms, some there will be a medium point where both has to come back and negotiate and fix and go ahead for signature. So that is the reason we cannot agree is to every clause what they mention. At the same time, the client also will not be okay always whatever the supplier mentioned in the contract. So every phase at critical stage it goes for exceptional approval. Sometimes it goes for negotiations in order to finalize the contract, and involves the legal, finance, and project manager before agreeing. Each delivery has to agree for delivery clauses. Finance has to agree for the payment terms, liability clause, and warranty clauses. The risks involved here and audit clauses, step-in clauses, all are very very important because each and every clause has a inherent risk, and every person has to review in depth the clauses because these and all clauses are making you to protect the interest in the future. If something happens, any dispute happens, any deliverables not delivered, any kind of risk, either one party can sue the other party in the court of law. So all the terms should be also reviewed by legal team as well. So together legal, finance and the project managers sit together, negotiate on the same terms and conditions and finalize the contract and will be sent to the supplier. Supplier also comes back and gives his opinion where he can agree and where he need to negotiate. So this is the way supplier side and vendor side, all the teams will sit together, discuss on the points and negotiate and finalize the contract. And always negotiate the payment terms and milestones and protect the companies with unlimited liability to limited liability and limited penalties. And any kind of client delays, approvals, change request, these clauses need to be clearly defined with the cap and defined deadlines and defined approvals. Maintain the written communication for each of the contract clauses and changes, because at the end of the day, the signed contract valid for whatever the terms they agreed in order to protect the interest of the both the parties. Scope of work, as we discussed, scope should be very specific and clearly defined and achievable and relevant and time bound. And so we can negotiate highly configurable and best efforts and easy to use. So we need to avoid these kind of vague languages and terms, and it should be clearly defined in the table and should be delivered to the customer. Acceptable criteria and what constitute acceptance, how customer will test the software and what constitute final acceptance, and how the negotiation should be fixed and short acceptances. For example, you have given the delivered the work. If customer is not replying for within 1 week or 2 weeks, then it should be considered as a deemed acceptance. So in this case, we are fixing to the customer. We delivered the work, and if you are not replying to us within a week or 2 weeks, we will consider as a deemed acceptance, and we will go ahead that you already accepted. So these kind of phrases will what will happen, it will make fix the responsibility and it will give the specific deadline for each person to make sure that one this contract is protected the interest of the both the parties. And change management, is there a formal process for adding removing the scope? Yes. So insist on formal change request process includes the written document and cost and timeline impact analysis, formal sign off before begins the work. Any work you have to start before that the terms and conditions of the contract should be included properly and signed and agreed by the both the parties in order to safeguard the interest. Sometimes what will happens, for example, the contract is signed by 31st January, but the work was started on the 1st Jan, right? In those kind of situations, there is a delay of 30 days. So in these 30 days, if any kind of a work got delivered, or if the contract is not signed as a effective from 1st Jan, there will be a difficulties for the parties in order to take into the revenue or in order to change any terms and conditions from the effective date. So, in order to avoid all those complications, always is better to sign the contract in advance before delivery of the work. So, as we discussed, IP data and liability, these are the very biggest financial and legal risks included in the contract, especially intellectual property ownership and foreground and background. Who owns this one need to be clearly defined. You must retain the ownership of your background IP and non-exclusive license to use. If they demand full ownership, negotiate a significant buyout fee. So if you need to offer anything need to be required, or if customer specifically ask you that one, I need this ownership, then you need to define that one on the request of the customer. You can sell that one. Otherwise, customer does not have any kind of responsibility, any kind of ownership in order to use the IP of the supplier. This is very, very important to include in the contracts when you are using the IPs. Data protection and security. This is very clearly defined as we discussed. In order to protect the responsibilities of the vendor, this kind of data protection securities is need to be included in the contract. And limitation of the liability, always we need to fix the cap, like total liability shall not exceed the fee paid preceding 12 months, so that the cap will be protected and interest and liability will be limited. And indemnification is the promise to cover the customer legal cost if the hardware infringement on third party's IP and causes the data breach. So we need both the parties indemnify to each party in order to protect. This loss of indemnification should be capped under limitation of liability. Any kind of a liability in the overall contract should be limited to 12 months fee payable. So same LOL cap should apply to the most indemnified classes here. This is always negotiable and depends upon the critical negotiation points. So financial and operational clauses. So warranties. What guarantees are giving? For example, you have produced a software, developed a software, and that software is delivered to the customer. So after delivery, a customer has to check and use that one, and any kind of requirement changes or any kind of bugs in the testing, bugs in the software, if they find out, they have to tell us within 90 days and we can do it free, right? Because we developed the software based on the customer request and testings and everything done, and we delivered. And if customer comes back after 90 days and says that one, this is not working, we can't give that much of assurance and keeping the resources working on the single project or software. And we need to fix always the period of warranty. Otherwise, the customer always, anytime he will come back and ask for change, unauthorized change or modification. So that it is a big risk for the supplier. So that we always fix the warranty period as a 60 days or 90 days, or if it is max 120 days. Payment terms, always 30 days from the date of invoice. This 30 days may be 60 days or 90 days based on the negotiation and requirements, and beyond that there will be interest and penalty. So termination always should be, for example, termination for breach of material. Failure to, for example, supplier promised something. Okay, I will deliver this software and I will give to you. If the software will not meet the customer requirement, then he can terminate. Then that is called termination for the breach. So there will be penalties, and these penalties, because customer says that I am asked for certain kind of software, you could not deliver that one, and I have a right to deliver without paying anything. In those cases, customer has to give certain kind of a deadlines to fix the bugs or any kind of mistakes in the software. And even though after the time limit of 30 days, if customer not able to fix that one, then the supplier not able to fix that requirement, then customer has the right to terminate the contract for the convenience and without sustainable cancellation fees. So those kind of things and terms and conditions need to be defined clearly in the contract. Otherwise, either party can take the advantage of the loophole in the contract and can ready to misuse those kind of situations as well. Negotiation strategies include there should be must have clauses like limitation of liability, fixing the cap so that we any kind of a mistake happens, we can fix our liability up to 12 months fee payable. If any unlimited liability we accept, then the company may go for bankruptcy also in order to meet the liability clauses. And maintaining the background IPs are nice to have, slightly shorter terms, and don't fight every red lines, because everybody has to come to the midpoint and agree and safeguard their risks what they have agreed in the contract. And use trade-offs. I cannot agree to unlimited liability, and but I can agree to shorten the fix the time in the SLA. And any service level agreements, if there is any penalties or clauses, you may limit the penalty percentage, right? That is the safest thing, and nobody will say that one, I agree for unlimited liability. And legal has to early to include and respond and always try to flag the risks in the business in order to protect the interest. To be safer side, any IT project contract always review the scope, payment, legal risk, IP risk, termination clauses. In addition to that, there will be a lot of other clauses as well, step-in clauses, or in case of any audit clauses, any common clauses. These and all need to be included in the contract. And well-negotiated contracts protect the both revenue and reputation. You find this link, you know what to do. So the negotiation strategies, few more I want to bring in front of you is know your leverage, because all the risk parameters what you want to include here, either between the vendor or client position, it should be any third parties are involving, who are the third parties, and what extent we can include their rights and duties in the contract. And benchmarking prices also, you need to justify what is the benchmarking conditions, what kind of services you are delivering, and what kind of geographical parameters you are using in order to do the benchmarking in the same industry, same level of technology, same level of geopolitical environment. You have to consider for the benchmarking. At the same time, bundle of services in one piece of deal, what and all services you are including, either for the training, support, onboarding. This and all should be included in one pricing and should tell clearly to the customer with a win-win benefit. It is a benefit for you and for me as well in this single pricing. So these and all negotiation strategies, tactics, and the timelines, deliverables should be included in order to make sure that the optimization in the pricing and the contract levels. For example, TCS is signing a software development contract, or Infosys is signing a software development contract with a US bank. The first they have to review the scope and SOW and number of resources they are delivering, and delivery and contract type and scope of work, payment terms and privacy clauses and IP rights, and exceptional profit margins after salaries. So this should be finance team has to take care, and management has to give the approval for that. Any exceptions beyond the negotiations or any kind of a liability clause, for example, you can go up to 12 months or 20% of advance payment uh, to negotiate these kind of things. This is kind depends upon internal company to company, the basic requirements, and if they go with this kind of process, they will have a level of approval matrix in order to get the approvals or exceptional approvals from the uh, top executives of the company in order to sign the contract. Without those approvals, you cannot go beyond the approval, beyond the exceptions, because it will lead to a company bankruptcy if you go for unlimited clauses. So always when you are reviewing the contract, have a aware, consciously take the decisions and make include the clauses with the cap or and risk protection in each clause. Make sure it will be properly executed.